Okay, and I'm also going to show you how to do a pendant version. I'm just going to be using these two little bezels that I got from Molten Gems, and we're going to be messing around in those as well. Today's tutorial is going to be very simple and easy, great for gifts, things like that. Now, you can use Sculpey liquid clay for this tutorial, but I am going to be using Kato liquid clay. And now the main reason I'm going to be using Kato liquid clay is because the colours, of which I'm using blue, purple and green, the reason I'm using Kato is because the colours have a semi-translucent effect to them. So if you have a look at these ones that I did a while back, you can see that the colours kind of have this interesting agatey appearance to them. I'm not sure if the camera's going to be able to pick up on that, but you can like really see deep into the liquid clay because I'm going to be using white, which is opaque in Kato. So that's why I'm using Kato, but again, you can use Sculpey. It's just going to give you a slightly different effect. So we're going to start out with our bezels. And so we're going to be doing the same thing for the large ones, and then we'll be doing a different thing for all the small ones. So let's start with the large ones. Now, always start with a base of white. And now these bezels are not very deep, and I want to put some, I do want to be putting in some resin later on, so I don't want to overfill these. So put in a small amount of liquid clay and then just brush that to the edges with a skewer or a rubber tip tool or something along those lines. Just push it all to the edges, make sure that you get it along those edges because you don't want any bubbles. Bubbles are quite a problem in liquid clay. And then once you've brushed it all to the edges and it's kind of self-leveled, then you can move on to using some of your colours. Okay, and now I'm also going to show you how to do a pendant version. I'm just going to be using these two little bezels that I got from Molten Gems, and we're going to be messing around in those as well. Today's tutorial is going to be very simple and easy, great for gifts, things like that. Now, you can use Sculpey liquid clay for this tutorial, but I am going to be using Kato liquid clay. And now the main reason I'm going to be using Kato liquid clay is because the colours, of which I'm using blue, purple and green, the reason I'm using Kato is because the colours have a semi-translucent effect to them. So if you have a look at these ones that I did a while back, you can see that the colours kind of have this interesting agatey appearance to them. I'm not sure if the camera's going to be able to pick up on that, but you can like really see deep into the liquid clay because I'm going to be using white, which is opaque in Kato. So that's why I'm using Kato, but again, you can use Sculpey. It's just going to give you a slightly different effect. So we're going to start out with our bezels. And so we're going to be doing the same thing for the large ones, and then we'll be doing a different thing for all the small ones. So let's start with the large ones. Now, always start with a base of white. And now these bezels are not very deep, and I want to put some I do want to be putting in some resin later on, so I don't want to overfill these. So put in a small amount of liquid clay and then just brush that to the edges with a skewer or a rubber tip tool or something along those lines. Just push it all to the edges, make sure that you get it along those edges because you don't want any bubbles. Bubbles are quite a problem in liquid clay. And then once you've brushed it all to the edges and it's kind of self-leveled, then you can move on to using some of your colours. Okay, there we go. So now we've got a white base. And so I'm going to be using, let's see, I think I want to be using the blue and green inside of these. So what I like to do is I like to take the blue, and now, quick thing, when you're using liquid clay, always stir the bottles before you start working with them. Just because I find that you can get some particles that rise up and it can cause graininess in your liquid clay, so just stir them quickly before using them. And you can just remove these top parts. I'm not sure if you could do the same with the Sculpey, but with the Kato you definitely do want to try and stir them up first. Okay, so I've just done some dots. And now that might be an effect you like. You can just do a bunch of little dots and leave it like that. But what I want to do now is I'm just going to add a little bit more white because we can afford to add more. Just try not to cover up those coloured parts. And all I do is I'm just going to swirl it around. I don't really want to overdo it, and if I feel like I'm missing one, I can always just add in another drop of liquid clay. And just swirl that in. Okay, and you can swirl it as much or as little as you want. I'm just trying to not have any areas that are too much of one colour. Okay, and I'm pretty happy with how that looks. I might want to just stretch that out a little bit over there. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it looks. And now everything I'm doing with this one, you'll repeat with the other little bezels. So the last little step, now this is optional, you do not have to do this, is to take a little bit of gold mica powder, and I have some here, and a nice tiny little brush. And just dip your brush into your mica powder so you get a little bit on your brush. You do not want a lot. See, there's a little bit there. And then just lightly tap on your brush. It might take a little while to get as much as you want, but don't try to rush this, because otherwise you're going to end up with too much mica powder on there. I just want a hint. Okay, so I'm almost done. I'm trying to do it mostly on one side of the bezel. Okay, and I'll just continue doing that until I'm happy with the result. Okay, and so I'm quite happy with that. Let me just zoom in quickly so hopefully you can see that. Let me just bring that over. There we go. So I would do that with all of the other ones, and now I'm just going to let that sit. You don't want to let it sit longer than half an hour before you put it in the oven, otherwise you'll find that that liquid clay starts to blend together. And so now I'm just going to be doing this one. Now this is a really tiny little bezel, so I only need a drop of white in there. Spread that around. Like so. And I'm going to be using purple, and now this time instead of dropping it in, I'm going to just pop a bit onto my tile here so that it's a little bit more of a controlled situation. And I'm actually just going to use my skewer to drop in drops. That way they don't end up being too big. And I've just got a wet wipe off to the side where I just dab my skewer off every once in a while. Okay, and I'm probably not going to be putting mica powder on that one. But there we go. That's how that one looks. And now I'll repeat with all of the other ones. Okay, so here they are all finished. Now I decided that I didn't really like the gold mica powder, and so I removed it. Now the way you do that is you just have a damp cloth or wet wipe, preferably something disposable, because liquid clay is incredibly difficult to get out of stuff. And you just will wipe out the bezel, and the liquid clay is very easily removed, at least while it is raw. And so I decided I didn't really want to do the mica powder. Also, I shouldn't have used gold. If I was going to go with mica powder, I should have matched the outside of the bezel. So in this tutorial, if you're using a silver bezel, go with silver mica powder. So you can see with this one, the bezel on the outside is gold, and so it matches a lot better when you use gold mica powder. So that's something that I should have done. But anyway, these ones I'm going to leave as they are. I don't really want to put mica powder on them. However, we're going to be doing two little bezels here, which which I'll show you in a minute, and we'll put mica powder on that. Put these to the side, we'll bake them in a little while. Okay, so onto these. So again, I always like to put in a white backing because our colours are semi-translucent, and so I find that white is a great backing. It also hides the colour of the bezel, as well as creating an interesting effect with the colours. So again, you'll just spread that out just like before. And now with this one, I'll be using the silver mica powder, and with the gold one, I'll be using the gold mica powder. And we're basically going to be doing almost the exact same technique as we did in the previous bezels, except that we're just making pendants this time around. And so you can see how easy this is, how quick it is. It's a great way to create little gifts. I mean, you could create these little pendants and attach them to chains, ready-made chain necklaces, and then you would basically have a gift all ready to go once you've baked and resined it. If you add UV resin to the mix, you basically could churn out a lot of these in one day. I mean, this, if you don't include baking time, will probably take around half an hour to make, so really not that long. And it's not half an hour each. If you're doing a bunch of them together, then you'll be able to do like, well, I'm able to do basically all of these in half an hour. So you can see how this is a great way to create little gifts or market jewellery, something along those lines. So I'm just adding my little blue dots, and in this one I am only going to be putting purple because that's what I did last time around. There we go. Now we're just going to swirl them. And again, if you like this kind of polka dot effect, you could be a little bit more specific with it. You could put in dots with the bottles, and then you could also put in dots with the skewer to create some smaller dots, and you could create a really interesting, cute little polka dot effect. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the swirling there. Just don't want a big block of colour. And then this one also, just going to swirl it around. And basically until you're happy. And if you end up with something that you really don't like, you can always just clean it out. It will waste the liquid clay, but again, we're using very little liquid clay here, so it's not too much of a problem. I mean, it's better than creating something that you don't like and wasting the liquid clay and the bezel essentially. Okay, so again, you could leave those exactly as they are, but I want to add our mica powder. So this one, we'll add gold. And I'm just going to be doing it on one side. And you can see there how the gold just seems to look better. It just brings out that little gold edge on the bezel. Whereas before it just kind of didn't really work that well. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's something that I can end up forgetting, but it is something to keep in mind. If you're working with gold or silver findings, just keep in mind what colours you are using. Okay, and I think that's enough. Now do not blow on it. The last thing you want to do is blow on it and cause the mica powder to blow across the surface, because then you'll get a smudged effect. So do not blow on it. You want to put that in the oven as is. And I'm just going to put some silver on this, and then I'll show you, and then we'll go over what to do when you go to baking. There we go. So there's our silver. And you can see how the silver is a much more muted colour in comparison to the gold. Now something you can also do if you want to play around a bit is you could then swirl that into your liquid clay. I don't really want to, but I will just spread that little bit out. There was a big clump there, but you could put in a bunch of mica powder before you swirl the dots, and then you could swirl it around and you would get little mica powder swirls. That would also look quite nice. Now what you want to do is you just want to pop these onto a ceramic tile, pop them into the oven for a full hour at Kato's recommended temperature, or if you're using Sculpey's recommended temperature, still bake for an hour, and then we can get onto resining them. So here they all are out of the oven. So you can see that the colours will have darkened considerably. Depending on how much you swirled, you're going to see, let me use a skewer to point this out, you're going to see the areas where we swirled a lot more, like around here and here, the colours are a lot lighter, but the areas where you left fairly large blocks of colour are going to have the semi-translucent but quite dark effect to them. Now the ones with the mica powder, don't touch the surface because that mica powder can still smear around. It will be stuck inside the liquid clay to a certain degree, but it can still smear, so don't be going and manhandling that. Now I'm just going to bring over a resin mat, and this is a little bit, there we go, and I'm just going to be placing these on top because we are going to be applying resin to these, and you want to let it cool first, and if you put it in water to cool, make sure that it is completely dry before you put resin on this. But there we go. Now I'm going to be using Lisa Vivalka's Magicless, which is a UV resin, because it sets quite quickly and it has a nice doming capacity. Now these ones, they're going to be a little different from the way we're going to do these. I'm going to show you how to do these first because this is the typical way to do it. You'll just pour a little bit of resin over the top and start out with a small amount and then just drag that out to the side, and I like to have it go over the lip of the bezel, and this is why I like this resin, because it likes to form a dome and it doesn't spill anywhere near as easily as some of the other resins that I tend to use, like ice resin, which is a 2-part resin, will like to self-level and have kind of a flattish surface, and so you have to be very careful with it. But the Magic Gloss has a much higher tolerance for the amount of resin you can put on. Don't go overboard, obviously, but you do want to put on enough that you're going to get a nice dome on that, and just scoop out any bubbles. So that is basically how you would do the large ones, but for these small ones you're going to have a little bit of trouble. So what I like to do is I like to pour a bit onto one of the other ones, so don't do these ones first. Pour a bit on, grab some resin onto your skewer, and then apply the resin that way. That way you can be a lot more controlled, you're not going to end up spilling too much resin onto the surface at once, and it's just a lot safer to do it that way. Okay, and then once you're done with the little ones, then you can move on to doing the big ones. Then you're going to make sure that you remove all the air bubbles, and once you've removed all air bubbles, you will pop them into the UV light for about 15 minutes, just to make sure that they're nice and rock hard. And then we can assemble our pieces. Okay, so they've been in for around 15 minutes. So I'm just going to take them out now. And you'll see that those mica powders now have been sealed in, and even if they were a little bit loose on the top, the resin will have settled them in and they will no longer move around, which is what we want. Okay, so let me just quickly twist that around. You can see how interesting the mica powder can be. It can make quite a difference. I wanted to show one where you didn't have the mica powder, obviously, but with these pendants it really does make quite a nice little addition. So we're first going to assemble our bracelet, so just pop those together. So I'm going to grab some jump rings, just tip those all out. And all you're going to do is you're just going to open up a jump ring, and you want to make the jump rings as small as possible because we don't want to add extra length. At least we want to try to avoid adding too much extra length. And then you're just going to close that up like so. And there you go, you've got those two linked. And then you'll continue doing that with all of the other ones, and then we can link the clasps. Okay. Alright, now what I'm going to do is on one side I'm going to just open up a jump ring and attach my lobster clasp. Here's a nice small clasp. There you go. And then on the other side I'm just going to open up a jump ring and I'm going to slip 2 jump rings onto that, so, and I'm going to attach it to this side. And that will form our bracelet, like so. So it's a little hard to see when they're all linked up, so I'll just unlink it there. And there we go, so that's the bracelet. It looks really cute, it's very easy to make, and it looks quite nice. Again, another thing that you could do is if you only have these teeny tiny links, you could also just link those all up together. It would make a really cute little bracelet. And so now we're just quickly going to do these ones. So this one I'm going to attach to a rubber cord necklace. So I'll just take a jump ring. You can also take a bail if you want. And just link that onto my cord. It is just that easy. There we go, that's the one. Then the other one we're going to do a little different. We are going to take a bail. Close that bail. And then I have a ready-made, oops, let's break the jump rings there. I've got a chain necklace here. There we go. And then there's a jump ring here, and there's a little extension chain at the back here for if you wanted the necklace to be longer. And so there is our other pendant. Again, extremely easy, and this is why I'm saying this is great for market jewellery. You could make them in a bunch of different colours, you could do different types of chains, there's lots of different things that you could do. So anyway, that is basically it for today's tutorial. If you enjoyed it, please do let me know in the comments below. Also, keep in mind, again, I've said in the tutorial that I use Kato, but again, you can use Sculpey. That one I do recommend. There are other brands of liquid clay on the market. You could try those ones out as well. Play around with it. Again, you don't have to put the mica powder on. I think it looks really nice. You could try pastels. You could also play around with a few inclusions, like for instance with these ones, if you put a little cog in the middle of each of those, that could also look quite cute. You can play around with different bezel settings. These are fairly simple, but you can get some nice ones. Just go look on eBay or Amazon. You can have a look at a lot of different bezel settings there. Brass and gunmetal, copper, gold, silver, lots of different colours. So anyway, if you enjoyed this tutorial, let me know in the comments below, and if you would like to support this channel, please do consider becoming a patron. I'll provide a link in the description below. It really helps me out and allows me to continue making videos every week on YouTube. And as always, I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.